Hi, this is Chris Converse, and in this episode, we'll be creating drop caps using the first letter selector in CSS, allowing us to add more typographic style to our layout without adding additional HTML to the web page. And if you'd like to follow along with me, download the exercise files, and let's begin by opening index.html in the text editor. And once you have the HTML file open, inside of the head area, you'll see we have a link to style.css, which we'll be opening in just a minute. Inside of the body area, we have a single article element, and inside of the article element, we have two paragraph elements. So we're going to be creating a CSS rule that's going to target the first letter, the letter R here, in this first paragraph. And if you'd like to see the layout we're going to be working with, you can open index.html file in a web browser. And at this point, let's go back to the exercise files. Let's find style.css, and let's open this in our text editor. Once we have this open, I'm going to scroll down to the bottom. After the article selector, let's come in here and now let's target the paragraph element and the first letter. So we'll type article space P. Then we're going to hit 2 colons, which is the same syntax we use for a pseudo element, and this is part of the CSS3 syntax. And then we'll type first dash letter. Then a space, put in our brackets. I'll split this open. And now we can define some properties for the first letter. So let's start with font family. 2 single tick marks for a string. Sophia is the name of the font. Then after the string, hit a comma, space. We'll type in the word cursive. Then a semicolon. Next line, let's set the font size. So font-size, we're going to set this to 4ems, which will be 4 times larger than the base font, which is set to 16 pixels up here in the body selector. So with these in place, let's save our CSS. If we go back to the browser, we'll see these changes taking effect. We can see the first letter of the first paragraph showing up here. And we'll also see that the first letter of the second paragraph is being selected. Since our CSS rule targeted the paragraph elements inside of the article, both of these are getting selected. So let's come in here in the CSS and let's only target the first paragraph element. So we're going to get the cursor before the 2 colons, and we're going to type a colon. Then we'll type first dash child. So we have colon first child, which will target the first paragraph element, and then 2 colons first letter, which will target the first letter of the first paragraph. And so with these in place, save your CSS, go back to the browser, and now we're only targeting the first letter of the first paragraph. Now it's also worth noting that you can only select the first letter of an HTML element if its display has block properties. Since paragraph elements are treated as block elements by default, this is why this is working. So this would not work with a hyperlink or a span element unless of course you change the display type with CSS. So now let's go back to our CSS file and let's drop this cap into the text area. So inside of our article space P, let's come in here and add a new property. We're going to set a float property. We're going to set this to left, then a semicolon. Then on the next line, let's set line height. We're going to set this to 0.9ems, just a little bit smaller than the base font size. And then next we'll come in and add a padding property. And we'll set this to 0 on the top, 20 pixels on the right, 0 on the bottom, and 0 on the left. So with these in place, save your CSS, go back to the browser, and we'll now see that that first letter is now dropping down into the text area. So now that our drop cap is working, I'd like to add some additional properties here to create an overlap effect. So to achieve this, let's go back to our CSS file and let's make a few additional changes. So let's come in here to font size. And let's change font size from 4ems to 8ems. That's going to make that much larger. Next, let's come down to line height. Let's change the line height to 0.1, so just 10% of the base font size. Let's come in here and change the padding to 0. Then on the next line, let's add a color property. Since we're going to be overlapping the text, I want the color of the drop cap to be a little less opaque. So for the color space, we'll use RGBA, put in our parentheses. Inside of the parentheses, we'll set 255 for red, 211 for green, and 141 for blue, and then 0.5 for the alpha. And then finally on the next line, let's come in and set some margin properties. So for the margin, we're going to set 0 on the top. We're going to set negative 11 pixels on the left. That will move the letters on the first line a little bit closer to the drop cap. Then for the bottom property, we're going to set 0. And for the left property, we're going to set negative 23 pixels. Which will move the drop cap a little bit to the left into the margin area. So with these in place, let's hit save, go back to the browser, and hit reload again. And now we'll see that the drop cap is much larger, the text is overlapping the drop cap, and the drop cap is sitting off to the left into the margin area. So this gives us a really nice layered effect, and it works in all modern browsers, except for Firefox. At the time of this recording, Firefox does not allow the text to flow over the first letter even when we set the line height to such a small amount. So we'll still get the drop cap effect in Firefox, we just won't get the text overlap. So with a single CSS rule and a few properties, we were able to transform the first letter of our paragraph into a drop cap without adding any additional HTML to our page. And so with that, I'll conclude this episode, and as always, thanks for watching.